In just 5 minutes, I'm going to be sharing the key components of making a Spider-Verse style render like shaders, city buildings, unique depth of field, and more. And at the end of the video, I'll be showing you how I combined all of these elements to make my final render, so stay tuned for that. So when I watched Across the Spider-Verse for the first time, one shot in particular struck out to me, and I immediately wanted to recreate it in Blender. To break down how I did it, let's start with the shader, and don't worry, we won't get stuck in the node weeds. Choose an object and head to the shading tab and create a new material. Next, add the most important node, shader to RGB, and connect it here. Then add a Voronoi texture, select it, and hit Ctrl T. And this only works if you've enabled the Node Wrangler add-on beforehand, so if you haven't, do that. Now change the Voronoi from 3D to 2D, lower the randomness to 0, and connect the texture coordinate node's camera to the vector on the mapping node. Then add a mixed color node, mix the shader to RGB and the Voronoi distance, and connect that to the output. Finally, to finish it, make a color ramp in between the mixed node and the output, and change it from linear to constant. Because now it's all black, drag the right slider to the middle, and like magic you should have a dotted Spider-Verse shader. Now for the actual parts of a Spider-Verse scene like buildings. In the movie I noticed there were two different types of buildings, the one in the distance and the ones up close. Luckily both are easy to make, so I'll start with the ones in the distance. All you have to do is make a bunch of cubes and give them a simple material. Make the material before the buildings because you can just duplicate one building with the material instead of adding the same material to every one. Next, add an image texture and open any image of a city with plenty of buildings. Connect that image texture to the base color in the emission, and next, because it probably looks like this, go into edit mode, select every face with A, hit U, and find cube projection. Now go into the UV editing tab and you should see your building image. Select the gray faces there, which are the unwrapped version of your object, and drag them onto a building. And again, like magic, you should have a building. Duplicate it as many times as you want, and don't forget to make them huge, at the hundreds of meters range. Next, in both Spider-Verse movies, the animators invented a unique way to handle depth of field, adding chromatic aberration to things that are farther away. Before you render your image, head over to this tab and search for mist and check it. Next, render your scene and go to the Compositing tab. Again, don't worry, these nodes aren't that bad. Here, Ctrl-Shift-click the main node, and now you should see the changes we make in the back. Next, add two nodes, a separate color and a combine color. What we're going to do is displace the red and blue values based on how far a point is from our camera. So add two displace nodes in between the red and blue connectors. For each node, connect mist to each of the scale x's. The mist is a black and white image that gets whiter the farther you get from the camera. And when a color is whiter, its value is higher, so we displace the values farther from the camera more. Next, create a math node and change it to multiply and put that in between mist and scale x. Make the value something like 20 and it's done. For the last part of the video, I'll show you how to create this interesting light effect from the movie. First, download a black and white polka dot texture, which a link for is in the description. Next, turn up the emission on any object you want to create that glare. Now render the image and go to the Compositing tab. Here, add a glare node and change it to fog glow. Next, mix it with the original image and add your polka dot image. Because it might clip off where the image ends, add a translate node in between your image and the mix node and change wrap to both axes. If your dots look like this, add an invert color node in between the translate and the mix. You can turn on bloom under your render settings too for more of that glow. So all I did for my final render was just combining everything I've given here. I used cubes for the buildings in the back, slightly more complex models for the buildings in the front, custom shading for miles, and emission for the sign. However, I did add some other things like volumes, let me know in the comments if you want a tutorial for that by the way, and rain. The last thing I used was reference. I got a copy of the movie on my computer so that I could use it as a reference without gathering a bunch of images from the internet. And that should be it. Comment if you want to learn how to make more Spider-Verse style stuff, and I'll see you next time.